Well, hello, Internet. This is Reese coming at you for the Mattriarchy, our 14th episode, if I can count. With me to my extreme east there is Matt McGibson.
Heyo!
And we are being joined in third chair all the way from the UK by Manachos.
Hello.
And our special guest for the first hour is, of course, artist extraordinaire Donal delay, which is
what's
I think. Thank you for coming on, Donal.
Yeah, what's the word?
Yeah, well, delay, I guess, right?
That's yeah.
I kid you. We were just talking off air a little bit about projects and fulfillment, and of course, you are wrapping up the end of Brutus, the Badass, right?
That's right. That's right. Getting pretty close. I have 2.5. You could call it 3 pages because one of them is a half-drawn double-page spread. But I call it 2.5. I got 2.5 pages left to draw, and then I'll be sending it all off to the colorist.
So, who do you have doing colors on that project?
I got a guy who he's got a pretty sweet gig, so I don't want to give out his real name, but it's we call him Junk Pile.
Oh, okay. You know,
that's a very sweet name.
No, dude, honestly, this might come off as weird, but given like the project and like the look of it all, that's like the perfect colorist for it.
Was that a name you guys gave him, or was that his nickname going from the get-go?
That's a nickname he has. He's a big Transformers buff.
Cool.
There was a Transformer named Junk Pile?
I think, wasn't it one of the garbage bots on
from the movie? See, I've never seen the movie. I just know that that's in that scene, Dare to Be Stupid by Weird Al Yankovic plays, apparently.
Oh. But yeah, he actually has a job where I don't want Comicsgate issues getting in the way of it. So I asked him to use a pseudonym.
Okay, there's a long-standing tradition of the arts of the nom de plume, so I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing.
Yeah, I mean it's not so much Comicsgate stuff, but you do have some of those crazies out there. But most of it is because the book has, a character whose boobies are popping out of her shirt like crazy, and it's got some extreme violence, and he's associated with some kind of G-rated properties.
Oh, okay. So is he from the mainstream, if you don't mind me asking?
What's that?
Is he from the mainstream, if you don't mind me asking, or?
Yes. So, and we both agreed that
that's actually pretty cool.
Brutus might have a negative effect on that if somebody searches his name and they find him on Brutus, but he's on this pretty G-rated book that's specifically targeting kids and teens. So I didn't want to jack up his career.
No, that sounds reasonable. There's a question I wanted to ask about Brutus for months. And I don't know why I didn't just pop over Twitter and ask you. Maybe because I was hoping you'd come on my show. But you worked with Nasser on it, right?
That's right.
Now I know he has like a closet like in his parents' basement that is just full of stories that he's been stockpiling for like. Right? Was this one of his from that pre-existent one, or did you guys plot this out together?
We plotted it out together. This was I came up with it first. I had this concept called Daring Adventures that had the same character, big burly guy with the pompadour, and I was going to be doing that instead of Brutus. But being a huge Lobo fan, somebody on Twitter told me, "Why don't you make your own Lobo type character since you love that book so much?" So I took that character from Daring Adventures, whose name was David Dare, and I just slapped on, Pitt's vest and gave him some Lobo type boots, and called him Brutus the Badass just for fun, and people seemed to dig it. So I was like, okay, this could work. Came up with a little.
Oh,
sorry.
No, I was just saying it fits very well. But sorry for interrupting.
Oh, it's I came up with a little bit of a backstory for him, and then Nasser just kind of ran with it, and he came up with a backstory for Gideon, and he came up with a whole bunch of stuff. Like I gave Brutus the backstory of his origin, and I gave him the car, and then Nasser came up with the origin for Gideon. The best part about that is when he started writing the book, he didn't know that Gideon was a robot, so he thought his sidekick was a human. So he wrote him that way. And as I'm reading the script, I'm like, this is going to be hilarious with a robot.
Oh man,
And
that's amazing.
once you guys get the book, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I was cracking up at it.
Definitely one of my most anticipated books. I mean, I've been, following you pretty much since. When did you start streaming frequently? Like, was it October or somewhere around there?
Yeah, it was around October, November.
Yeah, that was like I've been following ever since then, and I've been really excited for the book. I just, I really miss those Lobo type books, and I'm kind of amazed that DC even bringing him back. They made a big deal out of that, him coming back in Justice League versus Suicide Squad, and they really haven't done anything with him outside of some Justice League books. And right now, I can't think of anything he's doing.
Yeah, I would really love it if he got a series, something on par with Deadpool, something with a good comedy writer, like Giffen used to do. It's kind of a serious, funny, like airplane style thing. But I don't know why they don't. Capullo would be perfect for that book.
I think he'd have a lot of fun on it too. Like I could see him just tweeting out complete joy working on that project every single day.
Yeah, he's done a sketch of it before, and he said that he would love to tackle that character, but I guess it's just not a big enough character for DC to justify, doing that book to pay him.
And what a damn shame that is.
Mm-hmm.
So, one question we always ask with all of our guests: what is your origin story with comics? Going back to like when you first started reading them to all the way to working on comics.
Well, first I want to apologize. I think my kid just woke up from a nightmare or something, but I can hear her out there. I'm not sure if anybody else can hear her.
No worries, no worries.
My origin was I was kind of a casual reader. Like I would pick up a comic or two when we go on family trips to see my grandparents up in Illinois. But then got really serious into reading comics when the Image guys had actually broken away. Like I was casual getting into it. Picked up a couple Wolverines, some X-Men, and Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, and then they broke off. And I seriously got into it at that point because I was just like, these guys are dope. I want everything that they're going to put out. And I actually did buy everything they put out for like the first 5 years. That was a lot of money.
That's like the magic of like first kind of getting into these things. Like I told the story time and time again. I got into comics a couple years ago. I'm actually relatively new to this whole thing. Like I must have joined right before the big boom of all new, all different Marvel. But I was right there, and I was like, "Oh, this is so much fun!" And that's why, like, I feel like it was kind of not even a nostalgia standpoint. It was just kind of like, "Wait, why did the writing go from like up here, this level quality, to all the way down here, and no one seems to care?" And now of course they do. Or at least they're much more vocal about it. I think a lot of us really did care, but I don't know. I didn't really feel like there was that big of a community to talk about it yet. But I remember at least in 2017 when Metal was going on, I was working extra hours at my job just to keep up with everything they were putting out because it was so much fun. I don't know if you ever got around to that yourself, Donald. Have you ever read Metal?
I got a couple of issues, but I wasn't really digging it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I mostly bought most of the issues just for the art. Like the first 2 issues, it just wasn't hooking me, so I bought mostly for the art.
A lot of the side issues are actually really good too. Some would even argue better than the main series, and I might be inclined to agree. Especially the different Dark Knights. A lot of their origin stories are pretty fun, like little one-shot stories that work pretty well even outside of the context of Dark Knights. If you wanted to snip the Metal bits out of them, but there was some really good material there.
Yeah, I definitely did not get into the side stories. Some of the art looked pretty okay, but yeah, I was just at that point I was just kind of done with mainstream comics. But I'm still a huge Capullo fan.
it took me about a year before I hit there because I mean I'm still going to the LCS. I'm still buying TMNT by Kevin Eastman. I still think that's really cool that he's still doing it. And I'm also buying Grant Morrison on Green Lantern was a lot better. I mean, I know it's Grant Morrison, so it's kind of a given that it's going to be great, but it was a lot better than I was expecting it to be. Like I was, for some reason, I was kind of expecting to kind of phone it in, but it's been a lot of fun.
Man, I don't envy you really, because you got into comics as it was starting to decline.
Yeah, well, at the same time, I saw the kind of tick in, and then I found out like the pay is crap, and I was like, wait, so you're telling me I can make more money because in high school my job was, or at the end of high school my job was delivering pizza. I was like, I'm almost, if I worked this for like a full time, I'd be making almost as much, even more in some cases than a lot of these people are living this quote dream job.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and
that was bad to me.
I didn't know how true it was until I had my first book out, but yeah, it's very true once you know how the numbers work. I'm kind of pissed though that I got into comics in the 90s because everybody was making millions of dollars at that point. I was like, why couldn't I have been good in that era?
Well, still, like, I mean, things all progress for a reason. We're all on our own paths, destiny and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely don't regret where I'm at now.
Matt Villar in the chat says, I wasn't into metal either. I thought it was a little too convoluted. I will give you that one. It was a little bloated, but it was kind of one of those, I don't know, I don't like it when Zach says it's a stoner story and like it's like, oh dude, like what if Batman was like Aquaman, dude, and he had like he was like a woman, dude.
It's your Scott Snyder book.
Yeah, actually really love Scott
Snyder. I didn't read metal at all. The idea just seemed a little too like
silly.
Not silly isn't the right word. Okay, so like I guess part of it is I am really sick of the idea of the Bat God, right? When I was
Batman being the center of the universe.
Yeah, Batman being the center of the universe, and also Batman being infinitely good at everything, right? I mean, like Batman defeating Darkseid. Are you kidding me? That's a no. That's a no for me.
It's better than when I'm thinking about in isn't it in Heroes of Crisis, Harley Quinn overpowers Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman all at the same time.
No, just don't even say Hyra's
that. I mean, that sounded like a thing that was written just for like a Facebook post. It's like superhero fact number 4,000 billion. And if you don't read comics, you wouldn't know this, but Harley Quinn is actually stronger than all these main characters. It's like the people that argue Squirrel Girl is stronger than Galactus because of some joke series.
Yeah. I would agree with that entirely, but part of my thing is like I like when I got into comics. I also got into comics in the 90s, with in the early 90s with Tim Drake becoming Robin, with Denny O'Neil overseeing the Bat family, Chuck Dixon he came on to Batman when Alan Grant and those guys were on Detective Comics. So, I mean, like, I love that street level, down and dirty, investigation heavy, martial arts heavy comic book Batman, right? And that's a big part of, we've talked a little bit about our project Expositioner, right? A lot of my roots for that story come from my desire to see that sort of character, that street level investigative detective kind of character. And that's where I love Batman. And I don't mind Batman in like the big kung fu stories that he's been in. And I don't mind Batman using that investigative skill to suss out some sort of big science fiction issue like in Justice League or something. But you put Batman as the middle of everything, or you put Batman as the undefeatable, whatever. I'm immediately skeptical of it.
Well, go ahead, Nacho. I'll let you out.
It seems like they're using Batman as the Velma of the Justice League. You know what I mean?
And like to a certain level, that's pretty accurate. But one of the things you have is that just because you can suss out the solution doesn't mean you're the guy to bring the solution home. Right?
See, I also his contingency plans and everything that everyone falls back on, prep time and everything else. it is cool in its own right, but when it's overdone to the point of ridiculousness, it can be, I don't know. Batman, you should just kind of play up that he also is just a man for all his plans. You know, there is only so much you can prepare for.
Yeah, and one of the things too is you know, the idea about, you know, about Batman being able to be in the impossible situation, still getting out. That's great, but you know, escape doesn't equal victory. You know, and that's one of those things where if you have a really good writer who shows like, you know, Batman's out of his league, and so he's going to figure out how Green Lantern can save the day, right? So it's Batman's plan and Green Lantern's power, and that's a really great team dynamic. But when you have, you know, the idea that anyway, that's I would be repeating myself to keep going, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like we do kind of hit on the same points every single time, but I don't know, it kind of comes up naturally when, you know, we're both very passionate about these things. We both love Batman in the DC universe. I still do. I mean, there's not a lot out there. Like, DC is not hurting my heart as much as Marvel is right now, but I still don't have as much interest just because it hasn't been as exciting since Metal ended. At least in my eyes. I know we've all been talking about Metal, but and like we have varying opinions on it. Now with you, Donal, when was comics the career that you considered?
Not until about like 4 or 5 years ago. I was always like a doodler, and I did some indie comics, some very, 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 very indie comics, like stuff that you would never hear. But I wasn't like focused on learning anatomy or anything like that. I just wanted to draw, right? And I didn't really consider it a craft at that point. And it was about 4 or 5 years ago that I really started to take it serious and said, you know, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to really study anatomy, do as much as I can every day, do a warm-up that's some kind of anatomy study. And I did a webcomic for about a year, probably a year and a half, and that helped me improve a lot. And then at that point, it was like, okay, I think I can make a really good shot at this, and I was going to try to make that webcomic into something that could be a job. And that's when I ended up hooking up with Justin Jordan and doing an Image comic book.
Now, I actually had a question about Justin Jordan. Are you guys, do you still talk to each other, or is that like completely on the down low, or?
No, we are done.
Oh, that's a damn shame.
Yeah, I mean, he's still my favorite writer, one of my favorite writers, and Luther Strode is still my all-time favorite comic book series. But yeah, when he severed ties, it was basically that's it. Which I don't hold any ill will towards him,
especially with how cannibalistic this whole industry can be, you know.
Yeah, but he was, you know, he's very close friends with Mag Visaggio, and so me having that kind of a, you know, even a neutral opinion kind of really hit home with him. It was kind of personal.
The interesting is, I heard that Mags actually spends a lot of times at conventions, and for a little while I was just, you know, talking about Mags was just talking about her books and such, and then apparently recently it's evolved into ranting about Comicsgate the entire time. Like if you get to the table, so like, hey, have you heard about Comicsgate? No? Well, they've just ruined my life for the past year, and they are so terrible. Like, look, they even raped my dog, and, you know, like, just go on this whole thing, like, oh, and they stole my kids and threw them into a volcano. And, you know, and then people are like, oh, they sound terrible. So then I've actually heard stories of people who left conventions and they're like, wow, these guys sound like assholes. And then, like, their friend is just like, that's not entirely the truth.
Yeah, and, I don't know anything about that.
I've heard it, but it's kind of hearsay. And
yeah,
but I can kind of believe it, especially with the way her Twitter is.
Yeah, there's a little element of truth to it because of her personality online. But I would imagine, you know, somebody's not that stupid to just go and waste their day instead of making money to just bitch about a group of consumers that they don't agree with.
I don't know. I was just kind of, when you were sharing your story earlier about Mike Mignola, I learned recently how you actually pronounce his name, and now my life is flipped upside down. I always thought it was Mignola, just like Vic Mignogna is Vic. I always thought it was Vic Mignogna, and I guess it's just because I'm biased towards the Irish. But yeah. And then yeah, it was actually Carl who had pointed both those out to me. Like at first he was just like, yeah, it's Mignola. And I was like, what? I've been calling him Mignola for the past 2 years and that's wrong. And then I was talking about like, yeah, have you heard about what happened to Vic Mignogna? He's like, you mean Vic Mignogna? No.
Yeah, I only know how to pronounce Mignona's name properly because of Mignola.
Yeah, and I was just like, so like when you said that, oh yeah, he wasn't too happy with the Joker earlier. My mind went into fanboy. And I was like, oh, what is he like? Is he like this creative genius? And you know, you can kind of see some of that in the tweet I'd sent earlier.
Yeah, I've never talked to him personally. Like we were quote unquote friends on Facebook. You know, I would comment on his posts, and occasionally, like maybe once a year, he would comment on one of mine.
I imagine he has to have a pretty bloated friends list too.
Huh?
I imagine he'd have to have a pretty bloated friends list. You know, a lot of those writers and people, they have thousands of Facebook friends, so it's hard to see everyone's posts.
Oh yeah, there was something where it was like your personal page could only have 5,000 friends, and I think he was maxed out at one point.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, so you can't actually add more unless you delete some.
We've all seen our fair share of negative experiences with comic creators. But how about some positive? Do you have any positive stories like before this whole schism? Because this is also kind of throwing a lot of people out of whack. Where you know you have to take a side, and I have to imagine there are a fair bit of people who are just very uncomfortable, so they go one way or the other, just because, or usually against Comicsgate, just because they're afraid of the backlash.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have any positive stories like of meeting some of these people? Because I've heard, you know, you've talked a lot about how it was disappointing when you meet all these people. They talk down to you. They don't see you as they see you as like a means to an end rather than, you know, someone that you have to work with and create a great product.
I haven't really met anybody. You know, I can really say I've met Mike Avon Oming. I met him once. He was a really good guy. I've met a few people. You know, I've made friends with like people in the comic community and things like that. They're a bunch of good people. As far as creators go, yeah, that's the only one I've ever met in person was Oming, and we weren't like friends. We were just, you know, we talked on the Brian Bendis message board, but he was just as cool in person as he was online. You know, he's a good guy. He gave me he got high and gave me a sketch.
That's pretty awesome. Did he do it for free in that case, just because he wasn't paying attention, he wasn't sober?
Well, a buddy went to a party that he was having in Wizard World Chicago, and he was like, "Hey, can you do the sketch for this guy?" And explained who I was, and he said, "Yeah, sure." And gave me a Kill Bill sketch of Beatrix.
That's awesome.
Pretty much.
Actually, just recently, I talked to Andrew Huerta about this. I pretty much saw Kill Bill, both parts of it, just this year. I'd never watched it before, and I kind of regret that because it's such a good movie.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite movies.
Fucking yeah, I actually just watched it last weekend. I hadn't seen it before. I seen the first part when it first came out, but I hadn't seen the second part until last weekend.
What did you think?
Holy crap! It's amazing. It's like two different movies.
Oh yeah, it is. But I count them as one movie just because it naturally flows the one bit to the other. I actually heard they were planned to be one movie, but they were split up because audiences weren't as keen on sitting through 4 hours. Like they'd be much happier if it was just 1 and 2.
Well, and a part of it was like the first half definitely has more of a you know the Hong Kong action movie feel to it, whereas the second part feels more like a Italian influenced American grindhouse picture.
Yeah. Volume 1 is definitely a Shaw Brothers love letter, and Volume 2 is definitely a Sergio Leone love letter. And then every movie after that has pretty much been a Sergio Leone love letter from Quentin.
Now, looking at your profile picture throughout the conversation, I've been really meaning to ask you, where did Donnie Thumb and Fist come from? Both the idea and the actual puppet.
It just kind of sprang to mind. I was just goofing around with my kids, and I was, did you ever? This is probably like way over everybody's head because I'm I'm an old bastard, but there was a Robin Williams movie called Toy or Toys, where he was the owner of this toy factory, and there's this one scene where he's alone and he's eating soup, and he's got this like nun's shawl or whatever it's called, cowl, draped over his hand, and he's using his hand as you know, like a therapist talking to her, and he's just giving her soup, and just, you know, got his thumb kind of like a fist sort of position. I guess this used to be like some kind of other character on TV, you know, like Sarai. And I was just goofing off with my kids with that, and I just decided to give the character a like a Bronx accent and drew some eyes and a goatee on it. And then, you know, I had to give it a name, so just figured Donnie Thumb and Fist, because it was my thumb and my fist being the little character. And eventually I thought, you know, nobody's doing a channel on YouTube where it's puppets giving the news that all these channels are doing, and just being a smarmy little jerk. I mean, you have, if anybody remembers Syphil and Ollie, that was my big inspiration for it. It's like, I love that crap. I love it when puppets curse. The Happy Time Murders, that looked like a hilarious movie.
I didn't end up seeing it. I was kind of interested in how it would turn out, but I don't have anything against her, but Melissa McCarthy just tends to be in a lot of unfunny movies, in my opinion. But she seems like a nice person. Yeah,
I just like watching puppets curse and all the, you know, all the bodily fluids jokes that are going to come with them, because they're puppets. It's kind of stupid, so it makes me laugh.
It's kind of funny just to see these things. It's have you ever heard of a video game called Conker's Bad Fur Day?
No.
Basically, imagine it's this British-made game where they take, oh, look, it's like a happy little animal mascot. He's wearing a blue hoodie, but the game itself is about him getting horribly drunk and stumbling through his way back home and ending up in a war, and all these other full of movie references. You got like Saving Private Ryan, where all these little cartoon squirrels are like exploding. You've got the characters cursing at each other. There's like a Coliseum. There's a Matrix reference. There's like all this stuff going on. It's just one single day where all this stuff happens. It's actually a really great game. The controls have aged poorly, but it's a lot of fun, especially the humor for the most part. It's kind of juvenile, but it's aged pretty well, like writing-wise. I've enjoyed it quite a bit when I played through it recently.
Cool.
Now, the puppet itself for the Donnie videos, like, did you make it yourself, or was it custom ordered?
Oh God, no, I didn't make it. I'm definitely not skilled in that. It is custom ordered online on Etsy.
Huh. Now, can I actually tell you a funny story that'll probably get me fired in 5 to 10 years, Donald? When I first heard about you on on Twitter, when you first got in trouble for your diversity in comics tweet, I was thinking, you know, you're speaking your mind, and I saw your profile picture. It was black and white. You had a goatee, and you in the photo you looked kind of racially ambiguous. So I was kind of like, oh, this terrible company beating up on this poor black man daring to speak his mind. And I saw your name, and I was like, yeah. And then I was like, your name kind of converted in my head. I was like, oh, it's kind of like an ethnic name. I like it. It's Donal DeLay.
Wrong ethnicity, pal.
Yeah, for 4 months, like up until I first, you remember, I think I sent you a while back where you said, how do these people know what I look like? And I told you, like, you can find a picture on Google Images. And I was like, wait, he's white?
That's awesome. Yeah, people have, I don't know why, people have thought I was black, and they're kind of shocked when they find out I'm a white guy. I don't know what that's about. I guess it was because of the drawing. Why? I don't know.
I wish I knew. The drawing, like the profile picture he was using at the time, like, you know, the one he has now, there's like, you know, no real way you can mistake him. But the profile picture you had at the time was that one where you kind of looking up, like, or it was you looking out and you're like, what? You were bald and you had a goatee, and then the name kind of sounded, you know, ethnic. So I was just thinking, oh, it's Donal DeLay.
Racist.
Maybe. Yeah, a company I'm working for in 6 years, and future Matthew, I'm sorry you had a good run, but it's over now. Pack your stuff up.
You're not getting that promotion, buddy.
It'd be funny if it's just like, what? You're letting me go? Why? It was actually your fault 6 years ago, and you even came to terms with this back then. Now, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be on the decline, honestly, the outrage culture and the cancel culture, or whatever people are calling, because now the mainstream is kind of like, this sucks.
We can hope that they catch up with it and figure it out.
I think it's going to, because, I mean, the one thing that society's kind of gotten rid of in our jump to communicating through tweets and YouTube videos is forgiveness. Like, I'm not just saying that from like a good little sweet Catholic boy perspective. Like, this world can be brutal, especially like, you know, you make one mistake, you're out the door. No forgiveness, no second shot. And
yeah,
I don't think it's fair and it's unrealistic to think that anyone can live like that. But yeah. Now, when it came to, did you ever actually travel when you got the job at Image? I'm kind of curious about how these things work. Were you sent out to, I imagine, wherever it was at the time? I know they moved in 2017 or 18 to Portland, but weren't they in Berkeley for a while? Like, did you actually go out to Berkeley and meet with people, or what was the deal?
No, I don't remember where they were, but I've never met anybody at Image Comics. As far as employees go, they just all communicated through email. Like Eric Stevenson would just, you know, send me this email. The tax person would send me this email. That's it. Yeah, never got to see the offices or anything like that.
I heard it was a joke somewhere. It might have been a joke. I could kind of believe it at this point, but it was that Image moved from Berkeley to Portland, Oregon, because Berkeley wasn't liberal enough or something.
I would believe it. I mean, they're basically starting to get. They're looking at pitches now that have that sort of SJW agenda.
Yeah, like I just can't believe like them not writing back to Andrew Huerta and then putting out some really mediocre books. Like, I mean, I feel mean to say that because a lot of these people are just small time guys looking for their big gig, and they're just putting all of their heart and soul into, you know, making something and hoping the world likes it. But I'm just amazed when you look at something like The Pervert and you compare it to Andrew Huerta's work, and you just think, oh yeah, this Snoopy hooker story is actually really catching me right now.
Yeah, it's like he ended up getting a letter that was like, we don't have an audience for this, or we can't see this working, but you could see The Pervert working. You could see somebody.
Yeah, I mean,
drawing.
that seems like such a niche market. It's kind of like funny story. This is, you know, are you okay? Please close the airlock. Is everyone still on board?
What on earth happened there?
Well, I don't know. It's something, you know, technical issues. I was actually going to tell a story, and I think Donal would appreciate this, and I hope that everything gets back to working as soon as possible. But back in 2017, when Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was being put out, Captain Marvel made the cover, and at first I was like, "Oh, okay, that's neat." You know, they're trying to push her, so hopefully she'll have like a cool moveset and stuff. And then they announced the X-Men really wouldn't be in the game whatsoever. And people were kind of upset because they're like, "Oh, why not the X-Men? The X-Men are cool. Everyone loves the X-Men." Capcom's response to this, and I really think it was just Marvel saying, "We don't want to promote movies that we don't have the license to, so we're not going to put the X-Men in the game." But Capcom's response, their brilliant idea was to tell people, quote, "Nobody knows who the X-Men are." But you know, there they are putting Captain Marvel front and center to push the game. Like, way less people know who she is than know the X-Men.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm going to try to unmute because I went ahead and muted Donal. So I'm going to try to unmute him and see what happens here. I don't know if his connection went bad or if somebody decided to vacuum next to him or what was going on there.
That would be very unfortunate. Okay, 3.
So let's just see what happens here. Let's try it. Hey, Donal, can you hear us? No, I'm just gonna go ahead and mute him again. That's crazy.
That's a damn shame.
I'm assuming that someone's vacuuming.
What?
Someone's vacuuming in his house.
Yeah, it does. It sounds exactly like that. I don't know why that would be happening right now, though.
Well, let's just hope. Matt Villar says there's an alien invasion in Florida.
Oh, well,
I'd be open to it.
That could happen. It was just one of those Florida Man stories. Did you guys spot that? Project
Florida Man stuff. Now, there's actually kind of a funny story about that. My girlfriend tells me, and I don't know if this is true, I haven't fact checked it yet, that the reason that Florida Man stories are much more common than, like Alabama Man. Oh, dang, he's left the chat. Donal hopefully will be right back, guys. We're hoping this is just a technical glitch. Carl says hello. But I was told the reason that there's Florida Man stories and you never hear about like Maryland Man or anything else. And the reason for it is apparently that in Florida, you can broadcast these things and say, like, oh, this happened. This man did this and that. Whereas with other states, they're like, okay, if it's that obscene, don't put it out there. Just like arrest them, but don't really make it public like you would with other stories.
That could be. Donal, are you back with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
Okay.
We were taking bets on whether or not somebody was attacking with a vacuum cleaner.
No, I have no idea what happened. All of a sudden, on my end, things went silent for a second, and then I look up and people are being muted, and I can hear you guys and perfectly fine, but apparently you couldn't hear me, so I just
there was quite a loud cacophony.
It was static. It was really bad. Now I was actually going to tell you.
I'm really sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I'm just glad that you're back.
Thing.
Now actually, I don't know if you heard this, Donald. Did you hear about my Marvel versus Capcom story with Captain Marvel?
Yeah, I was actually commenting.
Yeah, see, it's interesting. They tried it 2 years ago, and it still felt just as forced. But like the stupidest thing was, and they're like, no one knows who the X-Men are.
Yeah, it's like the people buying that game are guaranteed to know who the X-Men are. What kind of BS excuse is that?
Especially since the first 3 Marvel vs. Capcom games all prominently featured the X-Men. Like Wolverine was front and center right next to Ryu from Street Fighter, like every single game. Which seems like a really unfair match, but they have to balance these things.
But yeah, it was. I would say that it was probably Marvel putting the pressure on them.
Well, I think it was Marvel also saying, don't use the X-Men because we don't want to promote products that we don't have the license to. Yeah. And I wish they were just kind of front and center about, because I don't know, even if it's a stupid answer, I'd be much more like, when you can tell they're lying through their teeth, it just makes it that much worse.
Just tell the truth. People would rather have that, especially when it comes to that kind of excuse.
Now, other characters, the game also featured, in place of all these other characters, Marvel vs. Capcom also tends to go pretty deep and find some really weird Marvel characters. Really cool ones as well, like Taskmaster, Dormammu, characters that you kind of wouldn't expect, but you'd be like, oh, that's a welcome addition.
Taskmaster's dope. Like
Taskmaster is the friggin' coolest character they have, and he's been done dirty like these past couple of years.
I can't imagine how they could really like accurately do him, because his power is to, like, part of his gig is to understand how you're fighting and to,
I forget, he has like a quote in one of the games where he says like, move like Daredevil, fight like Iron Fist. Basically, I'm awesome.
That's
awesome. Yeah, that's how he would play. Like he would charge you with his shield like Captain America. He would swing with a grappling hook like Spider-Man. He would shoot you down with arrows like Hawkeye. He was kind of like a hodgepodge of a bunch of different characters put together, but flowing between each other.
Yeah, because he could study your moves, and if you're fighting him for like 5 minutes or something, he picks up on it, and
then he's doing it against you.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be a very difficult thing to program.
I think they did it pretty well, though. I wish he had a little more options, because basically they had some characters in the game. And I think they fixed this, but I didn't stick around with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite that long. Sometimes you'd be playing, or some characters would have a ultimate attack. It took several super bars, and it was really flashy looking. And then other characters didn't get that luxury. Like Spider-Man, of course, would get one, and I think Ryu got one. But for like some of the smaller characters like Taskmaster, he didn't get that luxury. Let's see, they're in the chat comment. Matt Villar says Spiral was cool. I'm trying to think of if that auto-corrected to something. I'm trying to think. Spiral.
Spyral.
Spiral.
Well, it probably auto-corrected the Y, I would imagine, because Spiral was the.
She's a six-armed villain.
Yeah, all chrome. I think she's an android or something.
Oh yeah, she was in the second Marvel vs. Capcom. Yeah, and like my mind was locked on the last two games.
I'm trying to remember. Was she a Mojoverse character?
I think so.
Yeah, I wasn't really into the X-Men when that was going on. That was before I started really digging in.
Yeah, with what they've done with Mojo recently, like I didn't know who he was. I was just right there with Mim Headroom. Bless his soul, rip Mim Headroom.
Oh man, I miss his content so much.
It was great for when you're just working on stuff and you just narrate things. He's got this like silky smooth British accent, and he's gonna make you some tea.
That's racist.
Well, in fairness, it's not the only British accent. It's marketed.
Nachos. The difference is, I admit it.
Very, very different than what Nacho brings.
That's a Simpsons line that was really good. But yeah, I do miss his videos, and I'm upset because like he's like, yeah, I know, like people really enjoyed these, but I've got this really nice gig and coming up, and if I do this, I'll get through my studies faster, and I'll be on the path that I wanted. And so, unfortunately, that's just sacrifices you got to make. But
oh yeah,
with Mojo, I was like, that actually sounds like a really wacky, cool character. And then to see what they kind of did with him in the recent, in the infamous issue recently, where you're just like, oh, that's a bummer, because that actually sounds like this character with a legacy that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot about Mojo. I do remember that he was very, it was kind of in character for what he was, for the way he was, but also you know that their politics were put into that recently. But he was very much that guy from Running Man that was obsessed with ratings.
Mm.
That was a movie.
Like Jeff Goldblum's character in Ragnarok. That next level showman,
Yeah.
Imagine that was Mojo instead.
Jeff Goldblum was playing Jeff Goldblum in that.
Well, of course,
he only plays Jeff Goldblum. Like he doesn't care what you signed him up for.
He has for a while. He didn't used to, but he has for a while. But the thing about Jeff Goldblum's character in that, of course, it is Jeff Goldblum, but it's Jeff Goldblum with a specific mission in mind, right? And that mission is political power through entertainment, right? And that's the whole bread and circuses bit. And I don't think Jeff Goldblum in real life doesn't seem to be that he seeks much power. He just wants to work and be Jeff Goldblum and work while being Jeff Goldblum.
I always wondered if his mannerisms, like kind of speaking a little slower, having a lot of ums in his speech, if that was just him. Like he read the script once and then like tried to memorize it all by repeating it to himself. So like when he shows up on the set, he's just like
I think that is his personality. I remember seeing him in a couple of interviews, and he does kind of do that. Not to the extent that he does when he's in a movie, but it's there.
There was actually a great interview that they got taken off YouTube, but he did the steamed hams bit from The Simpsons, where he was Skinner, and the interviewer read off the parts for Chalmers, and it was great because his voice actually fits Skinner pretty well.
I can see that.
Yeah, if I can find because I know people have archived it, but I know I think Fox itself actually took the video down or something like that, which I think was a little bit silly because, I mean, yeah, it was like a corporation participating in a meme, and that was a little cheesy, but it was still really cool. The event itself was worth the trouble.
So I actually have a totally unrelated and potentially controversial line of questioning there for you, Donal, something I've been sacking away for a little while. Like squirrel preparing for winter. One of the things that's really most interesting is when you first kind of came to the comics Twitter scene and looked at Zach and the accusations levied against him and his reaction and everything. One of the things that was, I think, most notable about your defense of yourself was that people kept accusing you of changing your political alignment, and you're like, just no, I'm still a liberal. I think I'll always be a liberal. I just happen to think that, you know, a person's words are worth more than your interpretation of those words.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a very reasonable stand. That in fact, in many ways, is the definition of a classical liberal. What would you say, though, makes you stand out specifically as a liberal person?
What would make me? I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? What
are the things what positions do you hold that you would qualify as liberal ones?
Well, I don't know much about politics, but I would just say, you know, just treat everybody equally. I don't give a crap who you marry or who you have sex with. Man, I don't even know how to answer that question.
The thing is, like, I don't want you to ever feel like you're walking on thin ice when you're answering questions like this.
No. I really just don't know how, because I've never thought of it.
These things are hard to put into words, especially, like, you know, you could see the points coming up on the screen. It's like, yeah, I guess I agree with this more than this. But
yeah,
you know, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be good at coming out and saying, yeah, I support this. And, you know, you're not, it could, you know, it doesn't always translate well to debating or even stating your opinions.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I pretty much agree with a lot of things that you know, SJWs say. I'm just not a jerk about it.
Yeah, and one thing I actually was interesting is I was thinking about, you know, this whole thing, choose a side, Comicsgate or the comics industry, and I was just thinking, out of all the negative opinions I've held of these people for years, it was like an easy choice. I'm like, if I'm gonna follow my dreams and try to become eventually become a cartoonist, yeah, I'm not going with the guys that are paying me minimum wage and treat me like garbage and make me pretend to be someone I'm not gonna, like, I don't want to be. Like, you know, you'll get bullied, and a lot of the story, you know, a lot of the great stories of history, you know, the good guy gets bullied. Everyone does, I mean, but, you know, I'd honestly take them over, like, you know, it's an easy choice. It's like, do I want to be with these people, or do I want to go be happy and actually have fun and be able to speak my mind?
Yeah, and one of the things is I was not bringing the thing up to try to lay too heavy a thing on it, but one of my favorite things to talk about is the why people think of a thing, not just what they think. Lots of I think we leave clues, little breadcrumbs throughout our rhetoric and our conversations and our tastes about why we think them. But I love to talk to people about why they think a thing, not just what they think. And it's one of the things I think that is most notable in our political climate of today, is that we really leave out, because one of the things that is one of my little, back up for a second, one of my little cliches that I hang on to is that everything is political, because we don't understand what politics really is in our modern world. Politics is just the way people react together. You know, Archie is political because it's about Betty or Veronica, and Betty and Veronica both want Archie's attention, and Archie trying to decide which he's going to go for, the gal with the girl next door, or the one with that owns next door, right? And so, but that is by nature political, even though it's not about, you know, tax policy, and it's not about, you know, who's in charge of fixing the road, but it's still a political.
The affairs of men in a society is how Rhys always puts it, and I think there's a lot. I feel like it is a little more nuanced than comics are political. Comics have always been political. Lol, you're a fake fan. Goodbye. But I mean, fake fans certainly exist. But when it comes to politics, there's a lot more nuance than anyone actually wants to admit to.
Well, I think a lot of people but I think a lot of people, what we really want is just, you know, the freedom to let other people live their lives. And that's, I think, the biggest agreement that people can have, because without that, I don't think there's a lot of agreement, is if you can't be willing to let somebody make their own mistakes, then that's where tyranny starts, you know? And I think that's probably the most thing that I think everybody should agree on, is letting other people make their choices, good or bad, you know?
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that.
Now, one question I actually had for you, Donal, about with you and Nasser working together. Was it a little weird at first? Because I know there's I'm gonna like just throw out a guess, like 15 years at minimum, different age difference between the both of you.
20.
20, yeah. So like, is that a little weird to you? You're thinking like, oh, geez, when I was his age, he wasn't even a lot, or he was just a baby.
When I was his age, he wasn't even born yet. He was still swimming around in his daddy's jeans. No, no. I've had bosses in my life that have been younger than me, and stuff like that doesn't bother me because the person has the experience and they have the experience, and I don't know how smart a person is or how good they are at something. So it's just, can I get along with this person is the only thing I really consider.
You guys seem to have a pretty good rapport as far as that goes. Did you find working with him did it come easy, or did you guys have a breaking in period on that?
It came pretty easy. I mean, he's definitely he's a lot more laid back than he might give off.
Yeah, his Twitter, especially with you two, I always love like the old married couple dynamic you both have.
Yeah, but he's
a couple thing there for sure.
He's definitely pretty laid back. He's not as stiff as he seems on Twitter or in chats sometimes.
It's funny, like when you see him on live streams and stuff like that, he's a much different person than you if you were to just read off his tweets. Though, to be honest, I feel like a lot of people are like that. Their Twitter is very different from their like real life persona.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the way people talk. I mean, you could hear me. I'm saying lots of ums and taking pauses. I'm the kind of person that I like to take a few seconds, sometimes, a few minutes to actually process and think about what someone says, and then formulate my answer in a proper way and word it in a way so that it can be understood. A lot of times I fail at that, but I'm not as much of an off the cuff kind of person as, some like Ethan.
Man, I'd love, I could imagine all the negativity that would bring to that'd put me in the crosshairs, but that'd be fun to have him on someday.
Well, go ahead. Ask him.
You never know.
I think I'd just be sitting there like, Mr. Van Skyver, it's really nice to have you on.
He's just a person, man.
I turned into Rick Moranis from Little Shop of Horrors.
I'm not convinced you aren't Rick Moranis from Little Shop of Horrors.
I forget, the other day I was talking because I've talked to Carl on like video chats. He told me I looked like the angry video game nerd. If you guys, he's an internet personality, but if you have ever heard of him.
No, never heard of him.
I have heard of him, but I can't place him.
He's a foul-mouthed, like to the point of being comical. Like he plays it up a lot. A foul-mouthed video game reviewer who like would do stuff like chuck his. You know how the SJWs get really upset about cutting comic books with a knife and stuff like that. Like they'd flip their shit if they saw Angry Video Game Nerd. He's drilling an NES cartridge and then hitting it with a hammer. He's lighting them on fire. He's torching them, running them over. He's like doing all this stuff. There's some really great ones. But yeah, it's a really crass thing, and a lot of it's done with like this home movie production kind of thing. But he's really entertaining. But yeah, that's what Carl said. Let's see. In the chat, Danielle says, I can second that. Matt McGibson is an EVS fanboy, but not that that's a bad thing. It's not, honey, don't worry. I added that last bit in. I just like to reassure myself.
No, you can't really let that intimidate you. He's just a person like everyone else.
I did write to him at one point because, like, you know how I guess I'm a bit of a softie when it comes to Twitter. When people are getting hounded, or just when I want to tell somebody, hey, you're making some really cool looking stuff, like I'll just kind of be brash and I'll send them a DM, and I'll send them like a letter of support, and also tell them like that their work is really cool. And I think to my surprise, I did that with Ethan. I wasn't expecting him to respond, but he did.
Yeah, he's a very cool guy, man. Like, one of the things I kind of regret about my friendships with SJWs was the lies that I believed about him.
Oh, you were like kind of in on that at first?
Yeah, they, you know, everyone would tell me that he's such a horrible person. He's, he's a homophobe. He's this, he's that. He's terrible, terrible human. He's a garbage person. And then you like sit and talk to him for 2 minutes, and he's a pretty decent guy.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't like
seems
how
like he
everyone
cares
just
about
jumps
people.
to they're a piece of shit and everything, especially piece of shit. It's a really dehumanizing way. It's like a words that are reserved to describing like the lowest of lows, like the Hitlers of the world.
Yeah,
Like, but when it comes to someone like Ethan, or I don't even know if I'd say Mags is a POS. I'd say that she's an asshole, but
yeah.
um, but I don't like how brash they are. Like, just talking about being brash earlier, but being brash to that level is just it helps nobody, and it makes you look like you're over the top. And as we all found out, they really are.
Yeah, but and like he was the first when the shit went down for me. He was the first person to actually DM me. Well, technically, Zach was, but Ethan was the first person to DM me and be like, "Hey, are you okay?" When all that happened.
Well, that's what I like is a lot of these people, like even you, I've talked to you in DMs and stuff like that. You guys seem like real people. You don't seem like you're like, all right, I've got to word this very carefully. Just like, you're just like, oh, thanks, Matthew. I really appreciate you being so friendly and looking out for me.
Yeah, I mean, you sent me that one DM where it was like, why don't you take a minute to chill? And at first I was like, you don't really know me. How can you be saying that? And then, it's like, yeah, you've been following me for a while. You pretty much know me.
I mean,
But
I
you
really
probably,
do. I mean, I know that sometimes it could be a little intrusive, but I always do really care about you guys. And I tend to think about, oh, what are they doing right now? Because I imagine this has to be pretty scary for them when you're getting hounded on.
yeah, I mean, it's just, it wasn't like insulting or anything like that. It was just kind of, do you really know if I'm being too out there? And yeah, I mean, if you followed me for a minute, you would be able to tell the difference. And I really appreciated that you sent that message.
I'm really glad that it came through to you. But also, I'm just happier. I think lately everyone's been happier. I know that things have been hitting the fan lately in the community, but
Yeah, unfortunately.
yeah. But I'm just gonna kind of let that ride out. I don't really know what to think, and I've got other things to be thinking about right now.
Yeah, it'll blow over like anything else does. I mean, people will either apologize or they won't. And it's just the way things are. That's
Yeah.
that's that's what happens when you have a bunch of people together that aren't a hive mind.
Yeah,
You're
that's
gonna
the
get some
interesting thing is
disagreements and
that
squabbles.
I never liked how quickly dismissive everyone else or mainstream is, especially oh wait, no, but before I forget, there was actually one question I had. Diversity in Comics made a video a while back, and I was wondering if it was you, if you were the person in question the video was the subject of. This was back around when you were still at Image, where it was like, hey man, I really appreciate you looking out for me, but my boss said that they're gonna let me go if I don't block you or denounce you or something.
No, that wasn't me, but he has done a few videos where he's hinting at talking to me about them. I was kind of like his insider guy when he's
It's
talking
kind
about
of
some of them.
disturbing how it all is. It's like teenagers that never grew up, and not in the fun
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I mean, seriously, I'm kind of like a teenager that never grew up, but that's because I make jokes about farts and peeing and watch Transformers and like movies where things blow up.
Yeah, I
Not
mean
because I have like
that's the
petty
best parts of
squabbles and act like
being
a child.
immature. But inversely, like the negative parts of being immature, like all the things like, oh, don't talk to Becky because she talks to Gina and Gina doesn't like this, and Gina said this about me, and oh my god, I'm so over that bitch.
Yeah, there's a lot of high school bullshit going on.
And it's incredible that you
Sure.
think it's like this many people, some like several hundred people in these positions, like everyone at least pretends to hold in high regard, but and they're all just so petty. Like they never matured. Like none of them are well-rounded individuals, with a few exceptions. A lot of them are just like, "F you if you support this thing. F you, I'm not talking to you. You're irredeemable." And you're just like, you sound like a child. Like I'm a Spurg, and I know what a Spurg meltdown looks like, and I do not believe for a second that all these people are Spurgs. I think that they're just that immature. Now, I'm trying to think of some other questions. Because I did have some lined up for you, and I think we've hit almost every single one of them.
Cool. All right, interview over.
I really do appreciate you having you on the show, Donal. Like, it really means a lot.
I have a question.
Problem, anytime I can.
Oh, nachos. You got
What's
that?
Hawaiian pizza.
Reese, mute nachos right now.
Yeah, we can get in a fight, son.
I agree that I don't like pineapple, but do you not think it would taste better with ketchup?
What?
I do remember people look at me sideways for liking ketchup on macaroni and cheese, and that's like the way you eat macaroni and cheese.
I'm gonna have to try that because I can't really say that that's good or not. I've never tried it, but the way my mom used to make her goulash, it was just, you know, cooked elbow noodles with hamburger, and then you just like squirt some ketchup in it.
That sounds pretty good.
So yeah, it's like one of my favorite dishes. It's like that, you know, people talk about comfort food and going home. That's it for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we used to do all the time. Although when I was little, I think my mom stopped me after she found this out. But I would just like, I'd go into the fridge and I'd find cold hot dogs and I'd eat them.
Oh my God, my 4-year-old does that.
I know, it's disgusting. And like at the time, I remember being little and being like, "Oh, this is awesome." But then getting older, it's like when little kids eat full sticks of butter, and you're just like, "Ew."
Yeah. I try not to go ill when she does it because I mean I went and I microwaved bologna so that it would, you know, puff up like a parachute, and I would eat that.
I never liked that because then it just like, I don't know, it always got too stiff.
Then you gotta put it in for the right amount of time. Also, that's what she said.
Oh, now yeah, I remember actually one of the first interactions I ever had with you was one time where I was like, "So if your name is really Donald, then why do you call yourself Donald?" He was like, "I dropped the D off at your mom's house." Oh. That's the kind of immaturity that I actually really like the kid who never grew up. It's that stuff. It's not so much the, you know, being petty and stubborn and all that nastiness. But I'm trying to think of some other things that people might think. I do know a lot of people that did ranch on pizza. I always thought that was weird.
Ranch on pizza is a big deal.
Oh, that's nice.
My wife would probably do that. She like have a ranch IV hooked up if she could.
My little brother is weird, and he puts lettuce on meatball subs.
I've done that.
Why?
I have gherkins on meatball subs.
What the hell's a gherkin?
You're not allowed to talk anymore, Nachos.
Outlawed. Kicked out.
Sweet pickle.
I'm walking across the pond, which it really isn't a pond, it's an ocean. So someone's an idiot for naming it or calling it the pond. But I'm gonna walk over there and I'm gonna kick you.
Where I live, it's most likely I'll get kicked anyway.
Just hey you. Yeah. Kick.
Well, especially if you happen to cosplay as a pigeon or something, apparently.
I love going into the city center.
Now that's actually a thing that a lot of places out here, we don't have city centers per se. Sometimes they're main streets, but because of the way cities started small and got big, just where people built land, a lot of towns, especially from the Ohio River west, don't have city centers per se.
One actually interesting story. I just love it when you find intoxicated people and you just watch them do dumb stuff. Like we had a meth head one time at my old job at the pizza place I was talking about earlier.
I like how this story starts.
Yeah, he would jump into our dumpster, and we were just like, "Should we go stop him?" And we're like, "No, I don't. Do you want to go do it?" And I'm like, "No." And like he comes in later, he's like carrying like an empty box of pizza. He's like, "You guys got some good shit in here, dude." We're just like, "Yes, we do." And then like he just leaves it behind, and he goes and he finds a fire hydrant, and he plucks a I don't know what the term for this is, but it's one of those metal poles where you put that, you know, a stop sign, like it has that metal pole with all the holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
It just plucked one of those out of the ground, found a fire hydrant, and then beat the shit out of it for 15 minutes straight.
Wow.
Like he just said, and it was the funniest thing ever because you're sitting there like he's getting so much, he's like angry about it, like eating the fire hydrant.
You're like, should we call the cops? Like, no, this is better than Family Guy.
So at this point,
that's a pretty small hurdle there.
I don't know. Family Guy. The funny thing about it is, like I don't consider it as consistent as some of the other adult TV show or all adult cartoons, but every once in a while I'll see something from Family Guy that's like genuinely gets me to laugh.
I can safely say I laugh about 80% of the time when I'm watching an episode.
Yeah. The Family Guy is one of those things, and people can disagree with me, I suppose, but but you're wrong. But one of the, because what it is Family Guy uses a specific formula for its jokes, right? And what it does is it has tons of cringe jokes that aren't actually funny, but it throws them at such a rate, right, that there's just a little bit of embarrassment that starts to build in the middle of you, right? And when you get that little bit of embarrassment built up, what happens is you start giggling because that's the human response to that level of embarrassment. And once you're giggling, it's a real short jump to laughing. And so the one or two actual funny jokes that they'll have in a half an hour episode, there's so much that's not funny that you're just laughing hysterically at the minorly funny things because you're just cringe giggling the whole time. But most people don't notice that because they're too busy cringe giggling. So
I don't know. I will tell you this. The other day when someone was sharing a tweet around, and even outside of the context, I thought it was pretty funny. They had shared this thing where it was, they said J.K. Rowling in a nutshell, and it was Ryan sitting on the, or sitting down. He's like, well, I'll let you know, I was a big supporter of the LGBT community. And then Stewie's like, that's not how that works. And then he's like, what? Did I get that out? Oh, okay. You know what? GGLT? No. GGLG. And then he keeps going. It's like WNBA? No. You know what? Yes, Brian. WNBA.
Well,
I'll tell you one thing.
Sorry,
I'll tell you one thing. If there's somebody being punched in an episode of Family Guy, I'm definitely laughing.
Well, there's like I said, there's some stuff in there that I think it gets me. I just I don't know. I also don't watch it too often. Like I mean, with other shows, I haven't watched a lot of South Park either, but I feel like I've gotten a lot more consistent laughs out of seeing clips from that. Because that show just holds no punches. Like it doesn't care who you are.
Yeah, that's true.
It's still surviving. And also people have talked about this, that an entire generation of South Park, and we have the softest people ever.
Oh my God! It's like George Carlin said. It's just a pussification of America.
He was taken too soon, and some people were actually kind of surprised because I feel like he was a very wise man, even though obviously we disagreed on theology. But when it came to Carlin, like he had some really good points, especially on with social commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just taken too soon. A lot of people tend to be surprised when they know I'm Catholic, and they're just like, "Wait, you think that about him?" And I feel like some people can put their religion a little too, or when it comes to things like that, I think they can put their religion a little too high up. I mean, it's definitely important, but there are some things that you got to put aside your differences and go like, yeah, you know what, you're right on that one.
I think the biggest problem for me with Carlin was that he wasn't consistent. He had things that he believed, but they didn't match up with the things that he said he believed.
You'd have to provide some context.
I would, and that's a whole conversation I don't want to get into.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is this would lead down somewhere else?
That is hours of discussion about where things lead into.
That might have something to do with just the fact that he's a comedian and it's his job to just make fun of certain things.
Well, and that's part of the thing is and he actually talked about this, that every joke is actually a lie, right? As what humor does is it uses exaggeration, and it juxtaposes exaggeration with expectation, and that's how jokes work, right? So every joke is actually a lie, and so when people say there's more truth in comedy than in commentary, they don't understand how comedy works. In order for it to be funny, you have to exaggerate it, right? Now, you can tell honest comedy by exaggerating things so extremely that everyone knows you're exaggerating. That's how satire works, right?
Really quick, Reese, I'd actually like to make sure Michael Crichton in the group here. Is he
yeah, I was gonna
there? Is he like he's muted himself this entire time, and I'm worried that like we just kind of cast him out without even trying.
Well, part of the thing is I wanted to go ahead and wrap up with Donal, but keep talking, and that's the problem.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize the hour was up.
I mean, don't worry about it. If you want to stay, you're welcome to. Like, we might just.
I've been a bad host today. I'm sorry.
No, I had a good time.
Yeah, see, that's why I've been having such a ball. Oh, he's unmuted himself. Welcome, Michael Crichton. Thank you so much for Jurassic Park.
I was about to say, I'm honored that you mistook me for such a best-selling author as Michael Crichton.
Andromeda Strain was also really good, so you did a great job with that one as well.
Yeah, the worst
Appreciate that.
The worst, Michael, is that like I can't remember how to say your last name without looking at it. I can only remember Cauldron Comics, and that's the problem I'm at.
That's all good. It's Michael Derrick.
Derrick, thank you.
Yes, and I've had someone call me Michael Merrick on a stream before, so you're not doing too bad. Don't worry about it.
Better than Michael Moore.
Oh God, see, at that point I would be offended.
Yeah. Let's not that. Let's just use that as he who shall not be named and move on. So Michael
Voldemort, he was cool, and his face had a double function. You could plug your stuff into his nose and charge your computer. There's a walking power outlet.
That's ridiculous. But so Michael, part of what I wanted to invite you on here is talk about your Indiegogo you got running right now, which is it's the Abductables, right?
Yes, the Abductables. It's a Indiegogo campaign with Ironsight's artist Ibai Canales. It's a sci-fi action comedy about what happens when aliens abduct essentially a 1980s action hero. So I like to call it's basically Mars Attacks meets Commando. So
that's an amazing pitch.
Yeah, I just figured that one out recently. So I've been
I
using that everywhere.
Yeah, that book looks hella fun.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Donal.
I love Ibai's style too. I mean, he's got a great sense of tension in his art, and I love that.
Yeah, he's really the perfect guy for the tone of the book, because it's, we're going for an over the top comedic thing, and his expressions are exactly that, very over the top, and he sells the comedy really well. When we were working on it, every time he would send me a new page, I would just laugh out loud, like looking at it. So I was like, you know what, this is in good hands, because any worries that I might have had about the comedy on my end, I mean, he completely sells all the jokes. So it's definitely a funny book.
I'm actually sorry for cutting you off there.
But
I was actually going to ask him, when it comes to Canales, how did you come into contact with him, or how did you keep contact with him? Because, as we all know, he's been banished to the Outer Realms.
Yes, many times he's been banned.
Yeah, I think I did him twice, although I think the second one was because Twitter counted it as a ban evasion, which I think is kind of bogus because his first ban was a little shaky.
Yeah, I mean, his original ban is completely bogus. He, I said Abductables is Mars Attacks meets Commando, but the reason he got banned originally was because of a Commando quote. He did the quote, "I like you, I'll kill you last." That one. He said he said that to one of his friends, and of course the SJWs reported it as a legit death threat. So,
it's such a shame. I don't know what's worse, them doing that or them not understanding a classic movie line.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure they knew it was a movie line, but they didn't. It's
the same thing as like some of these other things. Like sometimes I see the Nazi scalp things like out of context, it looks really bad, and then I'm like, oh, it's really cringe. But what they're trying to do is Inglorious Bastards, and that's the sad part about it is I think Twitter is, but for all their blathering they've done recently about context, they're pretty shit at it.
Yeah, you could post that thing as a meme, but as soon as you type it, it becomes bad.
Yeah, exactly. And ever since he got banned, I'm trying my best to be on my best behavior on Twitter, because I'm so paranoid. You say the wrong thing and you end up getting banned.
Well, I mean, did you hear the story about people getting banned for sharing a picture of Pikachu?
What?
Oh god!
Apparently, I don't know how, but there was an image. That picture of Pikachu where it's like You know, it's the picture of Pikachu when he's like gasping. Like he's just chopping something. People have been sharing this story around recently that they've been banned for sharing that image on Twitter. Like they'll post it, and then they'll be like it'll be taken down and labeled as graphic content.
Oh, I guess because if they're reacting to the wrong thing.
Yeah. The other thing could just be if it's you know, part of Twitter's bots, and so the robot might be misunderstanding what it's seeing.
That's what has happened, because I mean, we all know, I don't know if any of you have seen this, but Tumblr has become especially bad about that since their big update that caused the great Tumblr migration from Tumblr to Twitter. They've actually had a lot of issues where people would post one image and it would be, you know, it'd be of like a Pikachu, you know, it's completely harmless. Let's just say anything, like a panda bear. It would just be like a panda bear just sitting there munching on some bamboo, and it'll get banned, but they'll put a picture of an owl in the corner and all of a sudden it's acceptable. Like the bot is pretty bad at its job.
That's why I feel pretty safe using the GIFs or the GIFs on Twitter, because
they're actually there in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, they're part of the app or whatever. So you know, hopefully you can't really get in trouble for that, right?
Just never show any interest in computer programming, because from what I've seen, saying "Yay, I'm learning the code" gets you kicked pretty quickly.
Yep, you definitely can't say that.
I was kind of surprised, because at first I was like, "Oh, okay, they're just like, I mean, BS, one-sided," but they're going the journal, like, you know, they're seeing this as like a harassment campaign. But then they started banning a lot of the people who just typed it in, like just the hashtag by itself, no context. And then they also started banning people who would they'd be talking about it and they'd use the hashtag, and then they'd ban them.
Yeah, that's the communist MO, ban everything.
You know, have you seen that? You know, there's this picture I found of Jimmy Neutron's dad, Hugh, and he's got this Russian soldier garb on. He's like, "Sorry, Jimbo, it looks like you're off to the gulag."
Might have to give Jimmy Neutron a second look. I never really was into it as a kid.
I loved it as a kid, and I love it now. I actually had I was freaking out recently because Jimmy Neutron's voice actress, actually, I painted this picture of Hugh Neutron recently, and he was all in blue, and because I was told to make a picture using only one hue. So I did Hugh and he was blue, and I posted it on Twitter, and I was like, "Look what I've done." And she actually saw it and said, "Oh, it looks great." And I was freaking out. I was like, "Oh my God."
Well, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, for better or worse, I do like the ability to approach creators and have them acknowledge your existence.
Yeah, it's so easy nowadays compared to before.
Before, I'd say a lot of my idols before like my sophomore year, a lot of them were Japanese, because I was like, "Oh, I love Nintendo. I love everything Nintendo." And then I had a few things I really liked in America, like, you know, I love cartoons and such. But the people that created the content that I liked mostly were, you know, kind of untouchable, because they spoke a completely different language. You know, there would be no way for me to communicate with them like I would if I were to just message Donal or Ethan, or Nacho is my favorite content creator of them all. Well, except for when he's in the kitchen, then he's a menace to society.
You could say I'm at my best when I'm in the kitchen.
No, you could say that, but you'd be lying.
It really is a double-edged sword, though, because yeah, you get to interact with your heroes, but then most of the time they let you down.
Tell you to kill yourself.
Yeah.
That was interesting, because like I was like, Carl was like, "Oh, dude, you gotta check out Bone. You're gonna love that. Like, you know, if Sam and Max, you love cartoony books like that, you'll love Bone." And I'm still planning on looking at it someday, but I was kind of really off put by his comment where he's just like, Donal said something really tame, like he was just like, I don't know, Donal, what did you say that like upset him?
I don't remember exactly, but I was talking about how people in mainstream books are just stewards for the characters, and
oh yeah, character over, like a lot of people are there for the character, not so much because they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy, I remember him from The Atlantic where he writes those race bait articles."
Yeah, and if you're writing them out of character, that upsets the core fans who are just there for the character and not there for the artist or the writer. And he was like, "That's
is this really what you think? Like that. Go jump off of the, it's like go fall off the earth or something." And I was like, wow.
The best part about that was everybody was like, "Oh, he's a flat earther."
that was a brilliant response. But I was shocked. Like, I mean, and then I talked to Carl about it, and I was like, dude, like, this was surprising to me. He's like, it's not really if you know anything about him. He said he's kind of known for being a little explosive, and I think it's a shame that so many of them are like this. Like, in some ways, I'd love to meet Steve Purcell of Sam and Max, like the creator of Sam and Max, one day. But I also wonder if maybe him not being on social media nearly whatsoever. He has a Facebook page, but I'm not really on Facebook anymore. But you know, maybe him not being on Twitter is for the best, so that like it doesn't get ruined for me.
Yeah, you know that old saying, "Never meet your heroes."
Never look at their Twitter. That's the modern version.
Yeah, all those. I don't know what you would call them. I don't think alternative creators, but basically like outside of like the superhero big two image, like mainstream, you have this group of guys like Jeff Smith and Charles Burns and what's the guy Chris. I don't know, but basically you have all these like guys, and they've always kind of had a reputation for being jerks. And it's only until recently that like the mainstream has kind of adopted their hoity-toity kind of personalities, where they think that, oh, I'm the artiste, and they kind of look down their nose at everybody. So I'm not too surprised about Jeff Smith, but
honestly, I wonder if my homeschooling has kind of prepared me for this. If I actually do become a cartoonist, being homeschooled, I wonder if that's prepared me for this life of, you know, because you spend a lot of time inside the house. And you're a lot of your communications are going to be digital. And in some ways, I feel like I've been training all my life for this. And in a lot of ways, I think when people have to make that transition, you know, they went to public school. They were working a lot of face-to-face jobs, and then they switch over to comic books. And all of their interactions, for the most part, with other people, a lot of them are done outside of their family. A lot of them are done over the internet. And I'm wondering, that can't be healthy. Let's see. So Danielle in the chat, she's talking about she loves this aspect, the aspect of Twitter being able to talk to creators. I know they say never meet your heroes, but I've met some of my heroes and they honestly seem like sweethearts. So I guess it depends on the situation and the person. The other thing is a lot of people I don't think act the same way they do on Twitter. Like, you know, Mark Wade, or until I don't know if he's still off Twitter, but you know, he's like, you know, tries to be all tough on Twitter, but honestly, like my little sister could not go for Mark Wade, and she's like 9, 10, around that age.
Yeah, there's a lot of keyboard tough guys out there.
It is like, and sometimes you know you got to stand up for yourself, and sometimes you're making yourself look like a clown, and not in the fun way. You're an ironic clown.
The funniest internet tough guys, I forget who he's called, but he says he's like comics biggest badass.
Oh,
John
Layman. Oh, jeez.
I have a little
goblin.
What I think is hilarious about him is he's like, and that was a heartbreaker for me because he wrote one of my favorite comic books as well as one of my first ones I ever read, which was Army of Darkness versus Marvel Zombies. And he was brilliant on that. And I think that if his other work is like that, then you know that's incredible. But he's so like, I think of all the people I've ever seen, he is like the most insufferable.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. He's completely shameless. I don't understand him. Like, he's just like, even if you're like on his side of the fence, like a complete SJW, like even some of the SJWs have to look at him and be like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
yeah, he has no chill.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, especially since like he also just like acts like there's no consequences to anything he says. And I mean, realistically, there aren't, but he's just a nasty person. Like, it's unenjoyable. Like, some people are just mean, and they're enjoyable to watch be mean. Like, if any of you have ever seen Bruce Campbell do like panels at comic conventions, he's a dick to everybody, but it's funny. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, and you have to be able to pull off that kind of attitude.
Yeah, and it's the same way with writing these characters. But that's a separate topic. But there's a fine line where it stops being entertaining, and it just makes you the person that no one wants to invite to Thanksgiving.
Right.
And I mean, and that's a shame because, like I said, he's one of my favorite. He wrote one of my favorite comic books ever, and it's a crying shame. Let's see. I still. Matt Sevilar. Yeah, but or he says I'd still tell Ren to kick rocks in person, and then he also says John Lehman, I meowed at him after he compared himself to a lion and he blocked me. Unfortunately, I don't tend to interact with a lot of these nasty people for the most part. Like unless, like on Twitter, when I quote tweet people, I try to keep it civil. Or if they're never going to see me because their tweet is like 1 million likes or something, and I have a pretty tame take about it, I'll just tweet something out. But with him, I kind of wish I was. There were some people where I just like, oh man, I should have been a dick and gotten blocked by this guy because I just can't bring myself to do it to actually block them myself. But
John Layman, he blocked me for something, and then he unblocked me, which I thought was really weird. Like,
Ren
I don't know
blocked me by
about.
hand, and
Tim Doyle does that with me.
I don't know, I'd rather be blocked by Tim Doyle, but Ren did that to me, and all I had done to her at that point was, and I know I'm blocked by hand because apparently recently she undid her block list, and I was blocked, and I was still blocked, and all I had done at the time, and I hadn't tweeted about her like directly to her face. I just remember I liked the tweet where like, you know, after she was shaming Donal for something, and someone dug up, it's like, okay, well, if we're on the game of people don't change, they just pretend to. How about these posts from 10 years ago? You know, and everyone found her like terrible. Honestly, like I was, even as a person that was, you know, raised in a pretty, you know, traditional Catholic household, pro-traditional marriage, like I was like, oh my God. Like some of the stuff she said was just vile, but someone had said, she's like, no, I've changed. I've learned a lot because I have gay friends now. And someone's like, you're just thought that you're just a terrible person then, and you're a terrible person now. You ever put that together in your head? And I liked that tweet, and I've been blocked by hand since.
Yeah, the problem with her is that she doesn't think that back then she didn't think she was a terrible person. Just like she doesn't think she's a terrible person now. She thinks that she's just picking the right enemies. Well, it all depends on what your beliefs are.
Well, I don't like her whole thing. It's like, I'm okay with cyberbullying bigots, especially when she used that brush way too broadly, and then she's going after people like Peter and telling them that they run a shit company.
Yeah.
And
it's like she's still the same shitty person. It's just now her targets have changed. It's no longer gay people that she's targeting or saying that your autistic child needs to be drowned because they look like a frog or whatever. Now it's, this person whose beliefs I don't agree with is the asshole.
Yeah, and they need to be hurt and everything. And she's, I also think is interesting is I call it the Ren from this paradox, or the Ren from this theory. And it's because I was a radical right-wing extremist at one point, this proves that all right-wingers are radical extremists like me, and they are the problem.
Yeah, no, you're just an asshole, woman.
Well, honestly, like, I'm scared now. I'm just afraid she's going to find this stream somehow.
Whatever. Hi, Ren. You're a cunt.
Actually, down to some of the stuff that I was alluding to earlier, not to get too much off the path, but when it really comes to the concept of the right-left paradigm, if you are standing there and grouping everyone together as in some sort of big collective, and I don't like this kind of person, these kind of people because they think this are garbage people, and so I don't like garbage people. You can't be a right winger. That is a thoroughly beyond liberal into communist collectivist thinking.
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't say liberal because like the idea behind liberal, and I think that's where a lot of people have been split recently is, I believe it's very much I believe you should be able to live like this and as you please. Like there's a lot of stuff that I'd actually agree with them on, but where it kind of split recently was, okay, I don't agree with what you're saying at all, but I'll fight to the death to have you say it, to now we don't need ideas like this. We don't need people like this. Let's just hope we are the genetic superiors or whatever movie Bob, whatever he says.
Yeah, that's one of the things I definitely don't agree with them on. Like I don't care what you're saying. You could be saying something completely horrible that I would absolutely disagree with. I'm still going to tell you that you have the right to say it.
Well, especially when a lot of these things, like they talk about how Ben Shapiro and stuff like that, they don't have a right to speak because they're so hateful. Like, at least with Richard Spencer, I could understand why you wouldn't want to have him at your school. But Ben Shapiro is like he's basically like anyone's conservative dad. Like, He's harmless.
Yeah, I've actually been listening to some Ben Shapiro debates, and I find I agree with him on a lot of stuff, and people are like, "This guy's transphobic." Oh, not really.
Well, some of the stuff, like, I mean, especially when they go after Jordan Peterson for, you know, transphobia or whatever, and like Jordan Peterson said several times, "Y'all try to respect your pronouns that you put forward." I'm just not going to go with this Z, Zy, Zer, Invader, Zim crap.
Yeah, and I mean it's not even that. The issue that people are calling him transphobic on is he's trying to protect free speech. He doesn't want the government getting involved in telling people what they can or cannot say.
Right, and that's the big divide. I mean, like, we can agree that X is an appropriate or inappropriate behavior, but where is the matter of force? Is a matter of is the enactment of that standard through government action, through violence, or is it through free will? And that's where that political divide really is. Is it voluntary or is it compulsory?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that just disturbs me how much the things have changed. Like, I know that there'd be people protesting Ben Shapiro regardless, but with how popular it is to say, or, you know, how quickly people are to cave to say, yeah, we won't allow Ben Shapiro to appear at these places, and he's like the most normie conservative there is. Like, I mean, same with Jordan Peterson. Is he's not some big threatening Hitler-esque guy. Like, he's basically like someone's dad from down the street that lets you mow his yard in the summer. Like,
yeah, and talked about, like, I mean, he's definitely more of a left-leaning person than you'd consider a stereotypical conservative. He thinks that, you know, collective action through the government can be a way to solve certain social problems, but that, you know, in our individual interactions, they should still be voluntary. That's a virtually, if there is a middle road position politically, that's it. You know, that's not an extremist position by any stretch. But
that's the other thing is, I can't imagine, like, with all these people that I disagree with vehemently, like Ocasio-Cortez and stuff. Like, I don't think she's very smart. I don't like what she says, but I also wouldn't say she's dangerous and needs to be blocked from all forms of communication, and we need to, like, just like kick her out to where we kicked the Native Americans.
No, we should let her talk more.
I'm honestly wondering if that's going to be the next thing. Is it's like, okay, well, yeah, we've taken rid of their speech. How about we give them the same treatment we gave to the natives? We just kick them into the desert and tell them to be happy.
Yeah, let's not start talking about the reservation system, because we'll be here all night. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah, I know.
I have some very, very, very.
And see, when it comes to these things, I always do wonder if I'm talking a little too off, or like just kind of straight from the, like, you know, not filtering myself enough when I'm on here. And I try to be as reasonable as I can, but I'm also nervous because people are so quick to throw you under the bus. Like I've talked about last week, when they threw Miss Jazz the Funk and her husband, John Castellanos, under the bus on Twitter, and all these different cartoonists from the mainstream cartoon industry were just like, oh yes, I can't believe they'd ever quote the Bible when being asked about what they believe on gay rights. I won't be following them anymore. I'm removing them from my friends list at once.
Well, I think that's inevitable unless, you know, for anybody that is to the slight right of an SJW, like, they're going to get you for something. They're going to condemn you for something. So I would say just be yourself, because it doesn't really matter. They're going to come after everybody eventually.
And one of the big things I suppose it's probably a theme of our show, and it's funny. It's funny because we call it the Mattriarchy, right? And which of course means the rule of mats, right? But the bottom line, if there is a theme to our conversations, a lot of it comes down to grace, right? The idea that you can give people the chance to live their life, you know, give people the chance to try to assume the best out of folks, because you are flawed too. And I think that's something that if we just lived in a world where we assumed the best of people's intentions, we didn't try to,
at the very least, assume that they can be helped and changed.
Mm-hmm. Then I think we'd be in a situation where we wouldn't be, you know, lining people up for the intellectual firing squads like we do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still worried about them, and I've sent them some of my well-intentioned but kind of spurgy messages to both John and his wife, who were like, they were under attack by all these people saying they deserve to be fired. She recently got a job on SpongeBob, and I think that's about as mainstream as it gets.
Well, that's encouraging. That's actually encouraging, because you would assume.
You're telling me that because when she was talking about having autism and stuff like that, and I know I've said that too many times tonight. I've been on a good roll about not talking about it too much, but when she said, "Oh yeah, I'm a girl with autism that like chased my dream of being a cartoonist, and I finally made it here, and she's Christian," and I was like, "Ooh, this is nice. This sounds really inspiring," and that's what I told her. That it was a huge inspiration to me and my girlfriend. My girlfriend loves her characters and stuff on Twitter. But when you see stuff like this, it can be discouraging. But then that's when I'm just like, you know what? Screw these people. Like if they're what's gonna stand in between me and getting what I want out of life, like if I die and I think, oh well, I let them walk over me. Like I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, and there's no benefit to letting them walk over you. You don't get anything out of it. It's not going to keep you safe. They're still gonna attack you, for something. So it doesn't end with there's no appeasing them, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they were like such mild opinions too that they got attacked for and denounced and everything else. And she's been gone off Twitter for Miss Jazz the Funk or Vanessa. She's been gone off of Twitter for like a week now because of this. And from what John said, she's very shaken up about all this because all these people that she thought she was on good terms with, all these people that are running mainstream, the creators of mainstream Cartoon Network shows and stuff like that are saying, "Oh yes, I'm removing them from my friends this post haste." Talking like posh assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one thing is, this is sort of a side note, but I think it's sort of funny when people will get all up in arms because a person holds a particular view about marriage or about relationships. And if you think that, gay relationships maybe are the best, and you say that and somebody says, "Oh, you're hateful, and you don't know what it's like to be marginalized," well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I got married kind of young, right? And everybody thought we were just going to fail. And they told us to our faces we were making a mistake, right?
Yeah.
And our artsy friends are just like, "Oh, you guys are breeders now?" Like, yeah, we are. We're passing on our genes. Maybe you should try it.
Maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, now I'm thinking about, being Catholic. A lot of people have told me that they told me I'm a pedophile enabler and all these other things. I'm not talking about because Nacho's one of my first interactions with him. He was like, I was like, someone called the Pope, and he was like, "You mean the king of the pedos?" And like, I honestly got a pretty good laugh out of that. Like, I'm not opposed to like pedophiles, right? But the ones that people are dead serious saying, "Oh, you're a pedophile enabler," or you're from this like horribly corrupt line. And I'm not afraid to admit the Catholic Church does have its fair share of corruption and sadly pedophilia, but it's not the whole part that's bad. Like, when that stuff came out in Pennsylvania, all of us, our whole church, our whole community was disgusted. We were together, we were like saying prayers all the time, or like we were holding these masses together in honor of these kids that were abused over the past 70 years in our next door neighbor, Pennsylvania. And we were disgusted by it. And so I know what it's like to just be thrown in with people, and be told that people instantly assume the worst of you and they say it to your face. It's terrible.
Well, I mean, if you for being Catholic are an enabler of pedophilia, then every one of us taxpayers who pays in the public school system is too, because there's way more scandals in the public school system that don't make it the newspaper that happen in the Catholic Church.
Well, I always think it's interesting is that's always where like a lot of male pedophiles are like kidnappers and stuff like that, as far as I've seen, but a lot of the female ones tend to be teachers.
It happens shockingly often.
Yeah, it seems like those headlines comes out every day.
Teacher, and they're like, "Oh yeah, and that lucky kid," and I'm just like, "Dude, the kid got raped."
No. That kid was enjoying it. You know it. If you were 15 years old and your teacher was hot and she was like, "Drop your pants, I'm gonna fuck you right here."
Like, yeah, okay. I mean, if you're that age, but like I'm talking about the ones that are like prepubescent.
Oh no. That's creepy.
Yeah.
Well, I never hear that story. Like,
part of the thing is it doesn't there's a couple of factors in that. If you look at the numbers, it's all up and down the age spectrum that you have that. Coaches and teachers and that whole thing, the whole hot for teacher thing, that's definitely a situation that goes on. But if you're dealing with a 13-year-old kid, that 13-year-old kid still doesn't have the wherewithal to deal with the power dynamic in any way that's not going to end them up with being jacked up, you know. I mean, not to make the point of it, but in my real life, right? I'm a human service mental health worker, right? And while I have not dealt with that particular instance, I have dealt with kids who were victimized in similar circumstances when they were young, and when they're by the time they cross my threshold at 18, 19 years old, they are jacked up. That is a definite factor. All that kind of stuff.
I mean, I always find it disturbing when your brain, hides that away. Like it traumatizes the kid so much that their brain erases it from their memory and buries it.
Well, sometimes it's not so much a matter of actually hiding it. It's just a matter of not dealing with it. And so it's one of those things that can be a day-to-day knowing of it, but it doesn't mean that they live their life in that place. One of the things about childhood trauma, though, is it tends to shape regardless of what kind of trauma it is. It's not just sexual. If you see your mother get abused, or if you live through your best friend getting shot in a drive-by, whatever circumstance you go through, a lot of times there's coping mechanisms that kick on, and they still leave their mark, but it doesn't factor into a day-to-day thing because it becomes part of, like, to use a computer term, a subroutine, right? And that's a factor and that counseling, there's lots of counseling theories about dealing with that. But in my particular line, I try to help people with their day-to-day life. How do you pay rent and, not flip off other drivers and all that kind of stuff. That went dark. So
don't worry about it. I mean, there's like, these are important things to talk about, and it is just a sad part of, like, the world. We like to think of it as this cool, twisted place, and in a lot of ways it is, but there's also a lot of good in the world. I think it's glossed over when people say that the world is such a terrible place.
Yeah, that's true. And that's one of the things we kind of were talking about earlier is, you may disagree with a person's choices, but that doesn't mean you have to disrespect that person. It's the same.
That's what I've always hated. Have you ever seen the thing where people say that if you don't agree with transitioning and these new and the suggested pronoun laws and stuff like that, that you're denying that trans people exist in the first place? And I'm wondering, well, one, that's really childish of you to jump that far, and two, like, how does that imply that whatsoever?
Yeah,
like, I still acknowledge you exist. It's just that I disagree with this or that, or I might not agree with your decisions.
It'd definitely be non sequitur. But okay, let's dial back from the heavy stuff. I want to hear a little more about abductables before we run out of time altogether, because we kind of shortchanged Michael about a lot of the cancer soapbox. So
I thought you said deductibles, and I got tax flashbacks.
Oh,
I'm gonna take off though.
Okay,
no worries. Thank you so much for coming on, Donal. It was a great time having you on.
See you.
Yeah, I had fun anytime.
Cool to be on the stream with you, Donal. I appreciate the kind words you said about abductables. So
yeah, that book looks hella fun, man. I really do think that's definitely the type of book that eBay is meant for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he could definitely cut loose. So
got some people in the chat saying goodbye to you, Donal. Matt Villar says that this has been the honest hour with the Mattriarchy. we do tend to get heavier as the night gets on, but it's usually, I like to think we keep it pretty grounded, and we're not just saying this is the way it is. Like, I feel like we're kind of open to discussion about things.
Yeah, I do like to realize that while I do believe that there is an absolute truth in the world, I'm not going to pretend that I'm the one who's figured it out. And so I like to hear what other people have to say about that too.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of the type of people we are, Matt, where we just we gravitate towards thinking about that, because we'll start with somewhere with we got two more goodbyes. So yeah, let's see. Matt Villar says goodbye to Donal. Here we have Sept Dinov 7 of 9. He says peace, Donal. Danielle says goodbye, Donal, and Carl says see ya, Donal.
Yeah, I thank everybody for showing up. I thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun.
If you ever want to do this again, if you're ever able to get a hold of Nasser, like I know he's a busy bee, but I'd love to have you guys on for a double, like especially after Brutus is released.
Yeah, cool. That sounds cool to me.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
All right. See you guys.
All right. See you, dude.
Have a good night.
You too. All right. Now it's time for the a 10-minute power session with Michael. Talk about some abductables. And I feel bad for Nacho because he's been here the whole time. And I know that, he was really excited to be in here. I really loved having you on, Nacho. If you ever want to come back in the future, we'll just throw you in.
Oh yeah, I will come back in the future.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to abductables, let's see. What if you were to rate this as in a movie fashion, like PG-13? Where would you put this, Michael?
Probably PG-13. I mean, there's graphic violence, but it's against aliens, so I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, people have joked about if you put polka dots on blood, if you color it green, it's not bad.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's not that bad. His blood's green.
Yeah, it's in black and white, so that's an added layer of it's not. That's like in the old movies, like they cut to black and white because somehow that makes it less violent. I never understood that.
Oh, it's like silhouettes or something where like someone gets their head cut off and it just like you just see the head fall off, but you don't see any of the gore.
Or even like Kill Bill when they had to cut to black and white during that one scene where she's just like chopping everybody's heads off and there's blood flying everywhere. And they had to cut to black and white. The guy
comes back with the pizza and he's just like, oh.
So with abductables, you've got your action hero, and you've got him trying to escape from the aliens. It's got a very comedic vibe to it.
Yes.
Do you guys have side characters figured out, or is this just a knockdown, drag out, balls to the wall adventure story?
So in the first part of the book is basically just that, it's just an action movie with the abductee, as we call him, just beating the crap out of Greys. And, at some point he gets his hands on some laser guns. So he starts wasting them with those. But it's only because when the abductee wakes up, he's an amnesiac. He doesn't know who he is or how he got there. So, but once he regains his memories, the story kind of takes a turn. And we do get introduced to some more characters. And, speaking of other characters, we actually do have a perk on the campaign that can get you drawn into the book as an alien abductee on the ship. So that might give you a hint as to what's to come in the book. So yeah, it's definitely not just, I'll put it this way, the abductee isn't the only human in the book.
Right.
I've actually got a lineup of questions for you right here. Firstly, the bit about putting people in the books, I always really like that, and I hope that someday I get big enough to see, like, my little profile picture here, my little golem head. I'd love to see that, like, someone sneak that in the book like they do with Nerd Wonder. I think that'd be when I really make it in life.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, I was going to ask you, when it comes to being you said kind of like an 80s action movie, like I'm going to imagine like a Big Trouble in Little China, anything Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
So like, what would you say would be some of your biggest inspirations, like specific movies?
It's funny. I think the biggest inspiration movie-wise would be Ridley Scott's Alien, which is weird to say because that's the furthest thing from a comedy. But what we're doing in the book is kind of flipping that original dynamic from the original Alien movie, which is basically you have this hostile organism loose on a ship taking out the crew one by one. But in our case, we switch the roles, and it's the human who's the hostile organism, and it's the poor aliens that are running for their lives. So
that sounds, actually, I'm gonna have to go check this campaign out.
So that
really quick is
the Rorschach dynamic, right? You think I'm trapped in here with you, but you're trapped in here with me.
Yes, exactly.
I love that line. It works so much. It works in so many situations. It's always badass.
Oh yeah.
If a bit crazy, but yeah. Really quick, is Sept Dev Nav 7 of 9? Is that Canales?
No, that's he's actually one of the backers of the book that's getting drawn into the book. So
okay,
yeah, he actually got picked up that perk today. He's a cool guy because he's got cameos in all the Comicscape books. Like I think he was in Stardust, and I think he's going to have a cameo in Cyberfrog, and obviously in the Abductables. So he's definitely a prolific member of the community.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, the reason I ask is because he's in the chat. He's talking about, yeah, there are 2 more spots available. It's a hoot being in cool comic books, and I was just like, wait a second, is this I thought that was Canale is kind of promoting the book.
No, yeah, and that's kind of a cool collection that he's got going on. You know, all these appearances in these books. So
have like a shelf that says books I've been in.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Kind of reminds. Carl says, talking about Abductables, kind of reminds me of the premise of Doom, in which the main protagonist is feared by the legions of hell instead of the other way around.
Yeah, when I first pitched it to Canales, he kind of made that comparison too. He said it kind of reminded him of Doom. It definitely has a video game type aesthetic to it.
I was actually going to ask about that, if you were inspired by things like Contra.
I never played Contra. I did, I never actually played the original Doom either. I played the Xbox version.
The 2016 game?
No, there was the one, it was like from 2003, I think.
Oh, the Doom 3, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, probably. But yeah, I think
being in Cyberfrog was an option, and that sounds kind of awesome, if not expensive.
Yeah, his understandably, I think the tier to get drawn into Cyberfrog was pretty high, but for us, I think we're on the lower end of the cameo options in these books that you see. I actually discounted it again recently down to 150. So for 150, you get drawn into the book and you get 3 copies of the book. So I think that's a pretty good deal.
As cool as that is, I'm sadly not made of that money. I mean, I always feel bad when I have to say things like that, but I'm a college student.
Well, there's always loan sharks.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, that would be worth it. It's like, so, you can have this couple $1,000. So, by the way, what are you going to spend it on?
It only costs you your kneecaps when they come to collect, but that's okay.
Okay. So they're talking in the chat about what Cyberfrog tier, and then someone says, was it eaten by wasps or survivors? Because it was $3,500 for a survivor. And then Septinov says, it's not a tier. Ethan asked me to send a face of me looking scared, and I did. And he put me in. That's kind of cool. Because Danielle was in the comment saying that, Nacho, your accent is awesome. I mean, if I sounded like that, I don't know how. I always wonder if on the other side of this, that I sound like this to Nacho. I'm like, whoa.
Actually, it's so funny you bring out the Western accent. I've recently been playing Far Cry 5. I think I mentioned this last week. And it's funny because this thing's supposed to take place up in Montana, but everybody sounds like they're from East Texas. And that's hilarious to me. The Canadians just think we all sound like Tim McGraw or whatever.
I mean, actually, the inverse is I could be sounding like Duke Nukem. Like, can you imagine if everyone either sounded like an action hero or a cowboy?
Well,
I imagine every American as Dale from
Chippendale.
Dale from what?
King of the Hill.
Oh, okay.
Is Dale the one that no one can understand what he's saying?
He's done with the cigarette in his mouth. That's Boomhauer.
Oh yeah, you're right. Dale's the guy that is like digging around in his trash at like 3 a.m. and he's got like a leaf, or he's got like a weed whacker or something to scare him away.
Yeah, he's the nasally one.
That's the skin. You guys know Skinny Matt V on Twitter?
Yeah,
that's his icon right now.
Oh yes, that's right. I've seen the Dale running around.
So
yeah. Let's see if my Rogers school present. Wow, use some Cyberpunk Travel. There's been enough some comments here. They're in the chat talking about being featured in books.
Michael,
it's really funny when a lot of these stories, they just need faceless people to get slaughtered, so they pick the people back in the book.
Yeah,
it's a really cool way to put them in there, and I love that level of interaction.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys decided to take Abductables black and white. What was your process on that?
That's kind of just going with Canalis's kind of signature style. That's kind of his MO, is to use the grayscale on his book. So I'm a big fan of that style. It's very reminiscent of like 80s Mirage comics, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I knew you were going to say that, because that's something that Canalis has always kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of his influences. So for sure. And, I think, I was a big fan of that style anyway, but for our book specifically, I think it definitely fits. It gives it the kind of feel of like a retro sci-fi movie.
So is it scale or just like a black and white line art? Or you guys have a big gray palette you're working with, or?
So Canalis, he pencils and inks traditionally, and then he scans the pages, and then he adds the gray tones digitally. So it's like all like the Zipatone filters and stuff, and yeah, so he adds that all digitally.
Okay, really quick. Matt Mattriarchy said this. I didn't pick up on it at first because I thought he said I'm not gonna lie if my graduate school. But he says I'm not gonna lie. My graduate school present was used on the Survivor tier, so I'll be a character in Cyberfrog, and I'm pretty stoked about it.
Nice.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that's we in our book for our cameos, you won't be murdered horribly by alien wasps, unfortunately, but you will be
than I was ever imagining. When I first saw Cyberfog, I was like, oh look, it's gonna be like Ninja Turtles, it's gonna be like family friendly. And then you got people getting stabbed through the head, and they got honey pouring out of their eyes, and it's disturbing and really creative.
Yeah, that book is it's going to be a classic for sure.
I'm going to think about if I'm going to spend the rest of my days just walk around going like, hey, this is what I sound like to Nacho. Just going like, Colonel, I'm sneaking around the base, but I'm tummy thick. Have you seen that? I don't know. I think that's the funniest thing ever.
Okay.
Or Snake from Metal Gear, but he's like ridiculously thick, and then they actually got the voice actor of Snake to read it off. Super cool, Matt. I think he he does. I'm really happy this guy in the chat thinks I'm super cool. He'd probably talk about one of the other Matts in this or on the stream or in the chat, but I'll think it's about me. That's the best way to go about life. If it's not about you, just assume it. Just pretend it is.
That reminds me of that line from the end of Ghostbusters. When anybody asks if you're a god, say you're a god. So I think that's really bad advice, but it's a great line.
That movie's full of them.
It's a great movie.
Great lines. Oh yeah, Carl recognizes my reference to Snake. So typed out Colonel in the chat.
So
yeah, I must have missed that meme.
Campaign is how many days in?
I think we're about 17 days to go. Okay. Yeah, so we're getting close to the halfway mark. I think last time I checked, we're at like 68% funded. So we still got a ways to go, but we're going along at a pretty good pace. So I'm fairly confident that we'll reach our goal.
Cool. I mean, 68% at about halfway through, it sounds pretty reasonable, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. And I know some people tend to wait till the last minute to back the book. I know I've been guilty of that. So definitely hoping for things to pick up in the coming days.
So what are your perks on that? You're doing it through Indiegogo, right?
Yep, through Indiegogo. We kept the perks pretty simple. We got the physical book or a digital copy, 2 physical books, a bulk order option, which gets you 10 copies of the book, and then of course the perk to get you drawn into the book. So, and all physical copies include a free digital copy as well. So,
cool. Very cool, man. Well, that's actually it sounds like a rollicking good time. Canalis's art, and honestly, should speak for itself. I don't know why. I know you probably know if you caught a lot of the flack when friggin' Iron Sights came out. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks were bagging on it, and I just didn't understand why because it definitely has got more dynamism than half of what you're getting in a mainstream comic book. And
yeah, and Iron Sights, Canales has described his experience on Iron Sights as kind of like an artistic boot camp.
yeah,
He really honed his craft and learned a lot on that book. And with the Abductables, he said that it was a great experience for him because coming off of Iron Sights, which is, you know, set in the real world and it's, you know, grim and gritty and somewhat realistic, for him to be able to switch to the Abductables and just really kind of cut loose and lean into his more over the top sensibilities, I think it definitely played to his strengths as an artist. So
yeah.
and he said that it's his best work to date, and obviously I agree. These pages look fantastic. So
are you have any plans for after the campaign? Are you going to try to shop it around to publishers at all, or?
We do have a publisher that reached out to us. I'm kind of playing that by ear, kind of seeing where that goes. But yeah, as far as right now, I'm definitely just going to be fulfilling the campaign myself, and, you know, just releasing it through my own imprint, Cauldron Comics. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely be open to working with another company for sure. I definitely want to keep my options open and whatever is best for the project. So.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Thanks for. I'm going to go ahead and move toward wrapping up the show. It's after 9 already. I know you said you've got to be gone here in a little while. So
yeah, I'm at the head to work pretty soon. Still got the day job, or in my case, the night job.
Yeah, and that's that's what we do as indie comic creators. We work the day job to afford to work the night job, or vice versa.
Yeah, it's kind of like, because I work evening, or I have a part-time job. Granted, it's very different. So, but yeah, I tend to work in the evening. So a lot of the creative stuff has to be done like in between school and sometimes with work, or if I have another obligation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
it could be tough, you know.
Having you on, I actually had no idea what the Abductables was, and Reese kind of introduces me to a lot of cool projects. Like recently, we had Thrashers, and we had Clayman. Although Clayman's much in the earlier stages.
Handyman looks cool.
Handyman was like, that was the thing that was all over the place recently, and I can't even tell what it's about. I just know people are busy.
I'll tell you what it's about, but Michael, if you need to take off, I'll stay on stream to talk this over. You don't have to stick around because I don't want to hold you back from getting to that job. But I do want to thank you so much for coming on. For those of you guys in the chat, thanks for hanging out with us. Make sure you give the Abductables a good look. I'm a full disclosure, I'm Facebook friends with Canales, and not like we're buddies or anything, but when I heard this about the project through him, and I really wanted to give it some air because it looks like a ton of fun.
I'd be open to having Canales on. I know that it has to be pretty wonky with timing, especially, you know, Nacho, what is it? It's like 2 in the morning right now?
It's nearly 3:10 in the morning.
Yeah.
A tick past 3. That's almost as bad as, do you know what a chigger is? It's like a tick, but a little more annoying.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now we're
yeah, hopefully maybe in the future me and Canales can come on together and you know, talk about it before the campaign ends.
Hey,
has Canales ever done something like this where he's like speaking rather than, because I've seen him text, you know, he did Twitter for a while.
He's Canales has done a bunch of live streams. You know, like you said, it's kind of hard to match our schedules up because he's like 6 hours ahead in Spain. So, but yeah, we've done some streams together, and he's done a few streams by himself to promote the book. So, but yeah,
I might do off the clock streams in the future. If like maybe you could let him know about this, since you're kind of a direct line to him, I guess. But
yeah, definitely.
If he was ever wanted to, I'm thinking about doing some, like, rather than on a normal scheduled time, like I might do a stream at some random point just earlier in the day for people from different parts of the world where, you know, it's going to be several hours ahead.
So
yeah, it's hard to keep track of all the time zones. I've just recently kind of got a grasp on like what his actual hours are. It's 6 hours ahead of me, so that's easy to remember. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I've gotten hang of it recently. I found out Nachos is like 4 hours ahead of me.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to remember it.
Yes, yeah, you got to think about it in terms like that, because then, you know, Reese has still got his whole night ahead of him right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then thankfully, I've got plenty of time to finish up school. Like I've got plenty of time, and of course, you can say this comfortably before stuff hits the fan, where things can get pretty crazy out of nowhere. But I don't know. I'm pretty happy about where my life is right now. Just watch this bite me in the ass. The next week it'll be like crazy.
Knock on wood.
So,
but yeah, thanks a lot for having me. This was a lot of fun. Before I unmuted myself, I was just listening to y'all's conversation with Donal. It was very entertaining. So yeah.
I did feel bad about that. Like we were.
Oh no, because I came in 30 minutes early. Like I knew I was on the second hour, so I figured I'd just hang out until it was my time. So yeah, no worries.
And then I just be talking.
But yeah, anybody who likes the sound of the book, please check it out on Indiegogo. You could just search for The Abductables, or you can go through the comics tab on Indiegogo. It'll be there. And we got plenty of pages of art on the campaign page. So if you're curious about what we're talking about, you can check out Canales' incredible artwork. And I think you'll like what you see. And if you do, please consider backing.
And I'm going to have to follow everybody here. I'm going to have to follow both. I guess I can't follow Canales on Twitter. What is your Twitter handle, Michael? Just so everybody in the audience, as well as myself, can give you a follow afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. It's at Cauldron Comics. So yeah, just search for that. My name is Michael Derrick, so you probably can find it through my name as well. But yeah, at Cauldron Comics, and I'm pretty active on Twitter. So.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for turning out today. We actually had a pretty good audience. Like recently, we've been dipping a little bit, but tonight we had around 6, 7, 8 people. It would fluctuate throughout the evening, but I'm very happy to see the turnout was bigger this time. Thank you, Nachos. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Donal. I know you've already left, but thank you once again. It was a great night, I think.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And Nachos, we'll definitely have to have you back and put a bug in your ear about pop culture and comics and art one of these times.
Put it in his belly button.
Talk about food.
I actually feel like if you were to take the bug from the Matrix, Nachos would probably eat it.
If it's pickled, maybe.
That's like the worst way to make food.
It's not the worst. There are worse.
Okay, we'll think. Okay, what's worse than pickling?
Raw.
Raw. Well, no, it's I like it. You know what they say? It was that one hip hop song. It's like I like it raw.
I've ate try.
Okay. Anyway, moving
along. I think that might have a different meaning, but
that's not what it's talking about, Matt. So we're gonna go. With that, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye, everybody. And thanks for tuning into the Mattriarchy. I hope you guys keep out there enjoying comics. Check out the Indiegogo projects. And for those of us who are trying to make things happen. So I will spare you all a speech about mine. And next week, maybe I won't. So who knows? But anyway, actually, I will tell you next week, I'll go ahead and make the announcement here. We have Pope Fire coming back to talk about comics and what she thinks the trajectory is for the culture, which will be fun. And Derrick, who I don't know his real name, and that's probably just fine. He'll be talking about his crowdfund coming on there. So that's who we have next week. So stay tuned to Matt and I on Twitter to get the details as they come up.
Also, if you just want to see stupid things posting about Smash Brothers.
That also happens. So, well, thanks for tuning in, guys, and have a good one, guys.
Thanks. See you.